whether we're talking Minneapolis, St. Paul, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, wherever you are, we try to make sure that we go and advocate for policy on the city, county, and the state level. I'm also an educator, father of three, historian, and the reason why I'm here is, we're talking about the Black Panther movie. It's a lot with this story that's very important, from the director all the way to some of the things that were talked about with this movie. This is a movie that came out during my teenage years, and there was a lot of controversy amongst the conscious community about this particular movie. So I just wanted to make sure I chimed in a little bit on it. Thank you.
Yes, hi. Hopefully you can hear me in this mic. My name is Essence Batts. I am also a team member of Black Civic Network. What we do is we go around, we canvas and build a reparations voter block. We are also educating our communities within St. Paul, North Minneapolis, of why reparations matter and why it needs to be a main focus when we go and we vote. I am also an educator. I am a writer. A lot of my poetry centers on teaching our children about themselves, about our history that these schools will not teach us. And I also, run my own business. I am a spiritual healer. I help people with their mental health and, just get back on the right track for themselves. Thank you.
Yo, yo. First, I just want to say thank you for inviting me in this circle for this very important conversation. Like you said, it's extremely relevant to what's going on. So I stated I am that I am because I acknowledge that I could be many different things. My gift is spoken word and using my voice and writing. Those are my abilities, and I'm a storyteller from that. I'm the founder of N4, and what it is just a dope collective of creativity and connection. N4 stands for new mindsets, new media, new leadership, and new narratives. And we created that because we believe in order to change the world, we got to change ourselves first. So our mission is just to empower ourselves and enlighten others to be empowered as well. And it's an honor to be here. Peace.
Mute. Yeah, it's a blessing to be here today, from the north side of Minneapolis. Brother Kais, invited me to come talk about the film, and it's definitely something I saw as a shorty. I think it's a very important, work when we talk about, the Black visual canon, and especially works that, we need to see, our children need to see. So, it's a pleasure to be here to, break it down, talk through it. Personally in my own practice, I take on the position of, the griot, the blues man. I think it's my job and my duty to help us contextualize, our story, our life, and help us imagine what a future, what freedom, what joy looks like. So it's a blessing to be here. And I want to say, again, thank you to BAB, and bless it. Out.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Brother Vachel, if you could give us a quick intro into who you are and why you got a seat right now at the table.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brother Kais. My name is Vachel Hudson. I am a transplant from Louisville, Kentucky. I've been here in Minneapolis for about 3 years now. And since I've been in Minneapolis, I've gotten involved with a few organizations such as the Urban League, Twin Cities, Young Professionals. And that's how I was able to be able to get back involved with the community here outside of my job with AON, which is a nonprofit affordable housing developer. And working into the communities, I know how important it is to get community-based programming into the communities where the people live at. And just a perfect resemblance of the different type of programming that the Black Panthers might have done back in the day. So just some of the everyday work that I do, from just wearing the many hats that I do wear working in the community. It's just an honor to be here and to be able to discuss this movie with these other distinguished panels. So thank you again. I'm happy to be here.
Nice, nice. And thank you all for being here, sharing space, sharing time. As you know, it could be really difficult in this moment that we find ourselves in to get people to come and commit to being together in a shared space. So just big ode of gratitude to all you guys for coming. And being socially distanced. So I wanted to kind of organically, really not really have too much structure in this flow of conversation, but I really wanted to cover kind of three main things in this convo and dialogue. I want to draw the relevancies of the featured film into today's struggle for liberation for not only the Black community, but the LGBT community, but not only the LGBT community, because, you know, there's a difference between a Black experience and a white experience and a shared experience. But then how it's directly relevant through its organizational framing to today's needs and things that we must address as a whole community of Black folks, even with different intersectionalities. Then I also want to talk about how we can transform the lessons from the past into today's strategic tools for liberation or towards advancement, and then how the film has personally impacted. So I just toss this one up in the air, and whoever wants to has a response. I just want to know who can draw like a great connection between the film, the time that it's in, and where we find ourselves in today's moment of time. And I could actually start it off. So I could say that I chose this movie primarily because of its different take on the whole formation and building up of the Black Panther. It takes the perception of Judge, which is the infiltrated actor who acts in white supremacy, which we see today a lot. A lot of skin folk who will intentionally come into an event that's, you know, organized for a specific purpose and then try to make it about something totally different. I've seen it a lot with just like real obvious ill-intended actors at the Black Women's Rising rally when they first announced their candidacies for offices. There was people there that looked like us, but was there not to support us moving forward towards, you know, different parts of liberation and revolution. And that was directly relevant to Judge because I know that there's many reasons why people will willingly infiltrate their own communities, organizations, and some of that is financial needs. Some of that is what Judge was going through. He almost got caught up in a case, and in order for him to get by, he had to basically snitch or tell on his comrades, although his comrades meant more good for him than the institution that was criminalizing him. And that's just one direct relevancy that I can draw a connection to, and I just want to know what you guys are thinking about.
I definitely agree with that. In the beginning of the movie, you see that some people were very against the Black Panther Party. They were not, you know, supportive of their mission. And we still see that till this day. When you go and you talk to Black people, they're still, you know, in this program mind to believe that we don't have no power to take control and build for ourselves and do for ourselves. When we see that the system is already, you know, putting us in more danger, why continue to still rely? And we still see that till this day. And that's something that nobody really wants to have a conversation about. And so that's something that stuck out to me the most in the beginning of the movie.
I love that response right there. Most definitely, how they didn't get the support in the beginning, but then once they started making some noise and got a little notoriety, everybody wanted to basically jump on board. You know, we see that all the time. But I love how when they were in the prison and the idea came up, they said the mission is to send a message, right? And it doesn't really matter who the messages are, as long as people get the message, which is important. One thing that I want to draw out of the movie that still happens today is the conflict, the internal conflict that we had in the Black community, where our own people still killing us by selling drugs and doing different things that's negative and ultimately hurts our community in a whole. And I really like how the Black Panther Party were quick to check those individuals, the ones that look like them. They were quick to be honest, transparent, and let them know that that's not the way to liberation. But as you can see, the love of money being the root of all evil, being the problem, being the factor. And we still see that today with a lot of individuals who could have other options and other opportunities, but they're still stuck in their old ways to just live out the stigmas that exist that hurt our communities. So yeah, I want to draw that, the drug dealing.
I want to echo Louis real quick. A perfect example of these folks just being stuck in their mind essence as well. You mentioned this also, where you have those folk who are trying to hustle in the community, and you know, they hustle into the same people that live in the same building. You know, folk who are late with the rent, got kids to take care of, and folk are sitting there hustling to them, taking away the money they could be feeding their family and kids with. And then you have these community, these personal empowerment type workshops and programs and things that you offer. And right there in the community, and all they have to do is come downstairs, leave their apartment, come downstairs to the community room. And then you have those, whether it's the boyfriend who you know, keeps them from coming downstairs to get that education, or it's the you know, the other excuses, you know, the program mind that, you know, that little program or the workshop downstairs ain't gonna help me, that financial literacy class ain't gonna help me, or that first time home buyer workshop ain't gonna help me, whatever the case may be. We just gotta get out that mind and also take advantage of what's out there, the resources out there, so we can liberate ourselves. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. Am I heard? Yeah, I think it's really something to think about. Kais brought up specifically the time period and really making the parallels across time. Really coming out of, you know, the civil rights movement in the 60s, the assassination, the public assassinations of, you know, several leaders, really the moral, complete annihilation, you know, of hope and really like the moral focus of, you know, the Black people, Black American people in that time. So that's kind of what the Black Panthers, you know, were formed out of, you know, is that kind of anger, you know, that kind of death of hope. And I think now, you know, post 9/11 and in this very post-racial fallacy of a world that we've lived in, we've even seen kind of unravel in our lifetime, especially the youth. And now we're really faced with a fascist government, and things are getting very, very plain and very clear, you know, and for a while, you know, it's been a lot of smoke and a lot of mirrors, and that hope is being annihilated in the same way, and it will continue to be, and we will be subjected to, you know, much violence. So now we're being faced with those same decisions, being faced with that same killing of our hope, you know, and having to really reimagine what freedom looks like. And we're of course, we're always brought back to self-sustaining, you know, independent and self-determined communities. And now that is our focus. So it's very important that, you know, we make those connections through time to see the Black Panthers were birthed from that time, from that kind of thinking, from that kind of, you know, death of their hope, you know, so we have to study them kind of like very much one-to-one to figure out, you know, how was it that we improved the model? So I think it's a very timely piece, and especially the study of the Black Panther Party and other, you know, self-sustained, you know, communal efforts, Black communal efforts, you know, especially that have happened in the United States. So it's pretty timely and pretty important.
Peace. Well, I just want to add a couple of fun facts to the dialogue. First thing is today is the anniversary when the Haitians decide that they were going to do the uprising in 1804. So peace to them, because when we're talking about revolutionary, that was the only uh, colonized group of folks who came over on the transatlantic slave trade who got their freedom. So peace to them. The second fun fact is the original Black Panther Party was actually started in Mississippi. So shout out to those brothers in Mississippi who they actually borrowed the phrase the Panthers from. So let's get to today, which is very important because the one thing that we need to tie together with the Panthers and the time when they were started in the late 60s, early 70s was the economic situation that we found ourselves in as a people, coming on the back of Dr. King, who was assassinated for asking for reparations. What are we asking for today? Reparations. Notice how the conversation is one and the same. Also notice how we've lost all the economic gains that we once had coming out of the 90s. So, you know, they said if you would have to stop for 280 years today, white folks would have to stop making money before African Americans can catch up to them financially. That's 280 years. They would just clearly have to stop. That's the projection that we're on. So when we talk about the Panthers and we relate it to today, it's pretty much on an economic basis that we see a lot of our struggle. That's really one of the main things that those brothers focused on, and that's pretty much what the 10-point program was about. Look at the policing situation, right? Remember how they were talking about, they were dealing with the fact that police were killing unarmed African Americans inside of the community, police brutality. That was an issue inside of our community. So that's another crossing point. Also, at the same time, while the Panthers were coming up and doing their things, there was a white group that they called themselves the Honkies. Let's keep this important, you know, because y'all saw it inside of the movie when they held up the sign, Honkies for Huey, better known as the hippies. So it was some intersectionality that was going on there. So the Panthers always talked about not only Black folks, but people of color as well as po folk as well. Now, the one thing that I would caution any of us on is just remember that those honkies slash hippies became the CEOs of these corporate giant conglomerates today. And when Brother Namir talked about we're dealing with fascists, we're also dealing with oligarchs, people who are hoarding all of the resources, who are pushing the fascist state. So that's where the Panthers lie today. Now, the one thing that we don't have that the Panthers did have was the solidarity of us as a people, because when the solidarity of our people made it easier for the Panthers to be able to be in place. And I believe a lot of that was destroyed with the Moynihan Report, because the Panthers were able to do a litany of things because they had the community as well as families to have their back. But last but not least, because I think this is very important, just like COINTELPRO broke up the Panthers, in our day and age, we have what they call the hip hop police, right? So that's all going back to the same type of thing. And if you look at Ferguson and you look at those brothers who were protesting hard during the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, I'm talking about those brothers who were out in the streets inside of Ferguson demanding peace. Look at how all those brothers were and sisters were systematically targeted and murdered. Now, I want you guys to keep that in mind because it had to be an agent inside of the movement that assassinated those brothers and sisters. And what I would tell you, just like back then, we still have agents in our community today. Some of the things that happened in North Minneapolis and South Minneapolis where people were burning down buildings. Some of those folks came and posed as friends of the community. We got pictures of our own folks with these folks posing with guns and rifles and the whole nine. So I would tell you that we definitely need to get our own 10-point program back into effect. We also need to make sure that we get that solidarity amongst each other. The lesson from the Panthers that we should learn, though, is we have to be careful on when we start getting these folks who come around that want to be a little bit too aggressive. When we start getting these outsiders around, we need to kick the tires and we need to check them twice. And last but not least, we also need to check the leaders, because the demise of the Panthers pretty much happened because of the drugs. And one last quick point. What made this movie so controversial was because Mario Van Peebles, the son of Melvin Van Peebles, directed this movie. And a lot of people said that he left out a lot of good important points. But the main thing was his father was the leader of blaxploitation films. So when you guys start talking about the drug dealers, the pimps, and the gangsters, it was Melvin Van Peebles who took the activist role, or the activist being the superhero in our community, and he came with blaxploitation films like Superfly, The Mac, and others, and that's what changed our psychology as far as what we wanted to be as real men. So that was the controversy in that movie. For peace, and thanks once again.
Nice. Definitely some real great points you raised. I often say that life for a black person had to be easier back then because they couldn't kind of tell us that what we were living was not what we were experiencing in today. So it's kind of like they had the body, but they didn't have the mind, right? And in today's, age, we're very visceral, very social media oriented. We do things for likes, for comments and things. We do it for the culture. And that's a catch-22. There's some pros and cons about that. I think when we allow anyone to do for the culture that aren't particularly of the culture, we set ourselves up for a decentralized positioning. But then also back to my point about them used to having the body and needing the mind, it's kind of like they could not tell us that for blacks only sign was not what it meant in the North, the same down South. And I think that, and I think that we are kind of moving in a way where we're detaching from our centered self into a more individual community. So a bunch of individuals who are in community together without necessarily being community oriented, if that makes any sense. And that makes us more easily penetrable because they can, lean on one of our individualities to sway us into acting against that of our collective interest. And I just want to know what you guys think about that. Used to have our bodies without our minds, but now they got our minds, so they don't necessarily need our bodies.
So what's dope about that is that when you look at everybody that walked in here, we got these smartphone devices in our hand. That's a part of the manipulation and the training of the mind. So that's how they have our minds and our bodies, and not our bodies, because our minds control the body. So that's very, very poignant. One thing that I always tell my children is that these CEOs inside of Silicon Valley won't allow their children to have these phones. So you have to be careful in how much you use these phones. And even myself, it's an addiction there because that dopamine effect. And that goes back to activism. One of the major issues that we have today with activism is so many people want to rush to the forefront to be the next Panthers. People kind of forget when you see people posing at the state capitol with assault rifles, it was the reason why assault rifles got banned. It was because of the Black Panthers. So when you start posing with your weapons and you ain't gonna bust a grape in a fruit fight in Welch's backyard, you could be disarming the entire community. And so when you see things like the NFAC, what they call themselves, the Not Fucking Around crew, and you go into Louisville and you end up, one of the members end up shooting themselves in the foot, we have to keep in mind the seriousness of what the Panthers were. This was not for play and this was not for attention. Today, a lot of the activism is what people call themselves woke. So the woke folk, or what I call the Wakandans, those folks, they struggle a lot with the idea of what it really means to be conscious. They are commercial conscious. And commercial conscious is typically the people that are in the way. And these are some of the things that the Panthers fall hard against, because those are typically the folks who do it for dress. They're playing a part. They really are not going to do anything. They're not really going to go and be serious about anything. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Somebody called me. My apologies. They're not going to be serious about anything that's going to be pertaining to our people. And when we have those issues, when we're not serious about who we are and what we are and what we stand on, the Black Panther Party, when you look at how they were infiltrated by the FBI, and you look at some of the things that they were fighting, a lot of it came in the form of sisters who were coming in and saying that even they wanted to be feminists and womanist as well. So they had a lot of issues going on in the Panthers, a lot of issues. It was a very complex time, and everybody wanted that time to shine. So the one thing that I would tell anybody that's compelled to really take a look at what's going on with us mentally, because that dopamine is what makes people want to rush to the stage. It's the likes on Facebook. It's the shared comments. It's the photos. Ask yourself a question. How is a person having a protest, and every time you get sprayed with mace, somebody is there with the camera catching you getting sprayed with mace? Every time you throw your fist in the air, they're catching you with that post. And then you go back and you ask yourself at the leadership today, how many of those people are parachuted to leadership? They catapulted straight to leadership based off of those photos. And that's part of the mental hold that we have inside of our community. A lot of narcissistic personalities come along with this type of thing, because that is the controlling of the mind. It's the attention seeking that leadership or that role has. My apologies for being too wordy.
Yeah, I just wanted to draw a real direct connection that you just raised, but was also in the movie. There was a point in the movie in which I think it was the Pan-African community, and the Black Panther community was protecting Malcolm X's wife in her visit to the city that they were in. And it was found out later that the Pan-Africanists were not actually loaded. Their arms were not loaded, so they basically was there for the show. And I just wanted to quickly raise that direct example out of the movie to what you were talking about, and I'm a bag out again.
I like that point. One thing I notice a lot when I talk to people via social media is I notice that a lot of us do not know our history. So part of my team, this is why I respect Thomas Berry so much, is because he's an actual historian. And I remember I made a post where I was saying, you know, we talk so much about letting the youth lead that we dismiss our elders. We have to know the right elders who are going to give us the right information so that we can lead in order to avoid the pitfalls that they fell into. And so that's why I force people to really look at themselves and be like, well, how much do you really know? Because are you reading these books that are out here so that you can stand on your ground and speak your truth without feeling like, oh, shit, my bad, somebody's calling me. Anyways, shit, my bad. But the point I was trying to say is, like, we do not do our homework enough. It's already enough that the schools don't even teach us about us. So we have to take it upon ourselves to do the work. And so many of us are lazy. Mind you, I used to be one of those students, so I'm taking the time to actually study and read what I gotta read so that when I'm out here at the Capitol, I'm able to speak on the things that need to be said and not what everybody else wants me to say, because that's really what we see now in this generation. Everybody wanna have clout, but they're not doing the work. So I digress.
Right. I think the really beautiful thing about that, though, and a beautiful thing about, like, the examples of the Panthers, is like, right, we think these things are phenomenons, you know, of our generation or of our times, but ain't nothing new under the sun, you know what I'm saying? Like there was Wakandans then, there are Wakandans now, like there are, you know, but, you know, but also there's something to be said about, you know, baby woke versus like you got to go through stages. This is a staging thing. A lot of us didn't know our history at that point in time too. You're talking about after seeing Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, a lot of niggas ain't want to fuck with that shit at all, you know, excuse my language. So that's, you know, that's always been a case of our people. How do we do a better job at educating? And I mean, the Panthers, you know, really, that being a part of their program is really political education. These are the kind of conversations that we have to have when we talk about what community resistance looks like, community sustainability looks like. You know, our educating has to be a part of that. But it's nothing new under the sun. You know what I'm saying? So these aren't just, you know, phenomena of our now. What I will say is, like, how they had to put a man, that was something that I saw. They asked them, they said, who are these Black Panthers, right? In the Panther film, right? I mean, boom. The BAB got these for each of us. How lovely. They said, yeah, this is just a group of, you know, idealist, you know, kids. You know what I'm saying? They just pumping their fist up. They're mad because they don't have a street light, right? He says, well, you know what? I think you should put a man on them and make sure your man keeps a low profile. They ain't got to put a man on us no more, really. You know what I'm saying? We got the man in our hand before, you know we the man. You know what I'm saying? So there's something that is a phenomenon. And when we talk about like this fascist front, you know what I'm saying? The violent attacks of our now and our present, they will look different. You know what I'm saying? These terroristic attacks will look different. In a lot of ways, they will be the same. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, we will have to sharpen, you know what I'm saying? But we're equipped as well. We're learning this technology in the same ways. But I think really to think about, yes, things are changing, identifying those things that are changing, but also our ability to recognize what is truly repeating itself. You know what I'm saying? What things are we seeing again? And how do we, help curb that, you know what I'm saying, and meet those needs. So I think that's a beautiful thing about the film and a beautiful thing about, learning from history.
Well, I will say that literacy is an issue that we're still suffering from with our youth. And so we still need that 10-point program, and we still need the breakfast program where we're out here, especially during this time, where our young folk will be able to get breakfast and be able to learn literacy. Because that was what made the Panthers so strong, with the political action network that they created. And that's what really scared people. It wasn't the guns. It was the organizing and how they organized. And just let's be honest, they wasn't flashy, right? Like, they were not flashy. They really had a point or where they were heading. A lot of people like to compare BLM to the Black Panther movement. And what I will tell to everyone is that the Black Panther movement and the BLM is much different. BLM is sort of like a McDonald's, right? It's franchise. It's a lot of franchises around the country. They don't necessarily have a national direction that they're all going into directly. They just do their own thing, right? And then Black Panther movement, they had a political identity. There was something that all the chapters were trying to head towards, right? And when you went to the website, you knew exactly what it was you knew at the time, whether you were dealing with Fred Hampton, right? Or you did with Bobby Simpson. I'm saying going to the website like they had a website, but I'm saying when they talked, when you got their plans, you knew exactly where they were going. And that was the other thing, Brother Namir, when you're talking about technology. I think it was Dick Gregory who said it best. Technology has never been a friend to Black folk, right? And we have to always remember, technology is typically what they use to destroy us because we don't control the technology. So what we have to do, just like the Panthers, is that we have to start doing, word of mouth meetings. We have to stop, like I was saying to sister earlier, we have to meet off camera. We have to meet off Zoom. We have to talk without pictures. We have to talk with all of these things. Because at the end of the day, when you really break down the Panthers, while we know some of the leadership, it was the small men and women who no one knew anything about who made it go. Those were the people that were running the breakfast programs. Those were the people who were handing out the information. That's what matters. So if we had people who were thinking more so like, I'm going to be more of this assembly line activist, right? I'm just going to roll my part on the line. When it's handed to me, I'm going to do my bit and hand it off to someone else, versus trying to go out and get an interview, versus trying to go out and get a spotlight, versus trying to break off and do my own thing, right? And then not only that, we're going to respect the other organizations that were around, because the Panthers, a great thing about them was they did world collaborations. Like, they didn't have they didn't have a beef with the Nation of Islam, right? Like the Nation had an issue with them, and part of the issue that the Nation had with them was because they called themselves Malcolm's kids. And that's very important, them calling themselves Malcolm's kids, because that now you know that they were thinking on a broader scale.
Louis and Rachel, y'all got anything to add into this part?
No, I just want to say I love what Thomas said as far as the collaborations, just working with Urban League and the programs that we do have, and the limitation of resources. We understand that we can't do everything ourselves, so there's people out there doing the same things that we're trying to do, and that's where we have to make it known that we can't be at the forefront of this effort, but let's get in line, let's step in, let's support them. So I just wanted to emphasize that, and hopefully that resonates and rings echoes throughout the cities, because we do need, as Black-led organizations, need to collaborate, come together, support each other a lot more, so that we can continue to liberate our communities. Thank you, Thomas, for that.
Yeah, and I most definitely want to say thank you for pointing out the fact that we most definitely must begin to move more incognito. As we see, I actually had this conversation in real time with one of the OGs as well, because honestly, like, me being an artist and being a poet, what it does, like, my energy really attracts a lot of other people, and sometimes not even wanting to be interviewed or wanting to have that spotlight, sometimes it just comes, right? And then I was also having this, like, state of mind of how can we use media to kind of put out these images of strong Black unity, but then they redirected me and was like, you know, the Black Panthers were infiltrated because they was so seen, like the platform was always on them, so that was huge. So then I had to understand, you know, real G's move in silence, right? So like you said, we must start doing these word of mouth meetings, this word of mouth organization. And then also what I would like to include in this is like that state of mind that us as a people have is like, we need a strong leader, right? Like we need a strong Black leader. We need Jesus. We need the Messiah, right? This Christianity and religious stories and a lot of just different images in our history has this mentality of we need one leader, but that has been poisoned. You know, what we need to do is to be able to change that message and say, no, I'm not just one strong essential leader. We're all leaders, right? We all have a light. You know, we don't need a Messiah. We need the Messiahs. We need everybody to find what their light is, essentially, and understand that they are very much a part of this revolution, no matter what your role is, you know. And I think that's important for us to understand as well, as far as like the ones who will be plucked out of the crew, is like being identified as leaders or spokespeople, you know, because they will be plucked out in this world regardless, right? I think it's important that we hold those people accountable and let them know, like, man, be conscious of what you feeding into our community, you know. So most definitely.
Facts. I definitely think, you know, talking back to Thomas, really thinking about, right, technology, you know, first of all, technology, the front of technology is military. You know what I'm saying? All technological progress comes out of militarization, you know, in the state. You know what I'm saying? And that will always be used against us. So we have to be leery of these things. We also have to do our learnings. I say that as a, you know, I'm not a gadget. You know what I'm saying? I ain't the one that's gonna be breaking the codes, but we gonna need niggas that could break down and break through the wall. You know what I'm saying? But we also have to begin to speak our languages. You know what I'm saying? There's something to be said about, we talking about today, you know, Haitian, you know, the Haitians, you know, getting their freedom. You know what I'm saying? We talk about the role of voodoo in that. You know what I'm talking about the language of the drum, the language of ceremony. You know what I'm saying? Talking about Hush Harbor. If the Panthers were supposed to be incognito, they were supposed to be, you know what I'm saying, nighttime in the night. You know what I'm saying? We got to get on the Underground Railroad with it, because I mean, our visibility is at an all-time high. You know what I'm saying? We are on the plantation. We're on the plantation 24/7. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what we're in. You know what I'm saying? And it's hard for us to really contextualize ourselves in that way. But yeah, we're on a colony. You know, so we have to be really thinking in those kinds of ways. And I really fuck with the assembly line approach. We have to decentralize our approach to activism, our approach to community leading. You know what I'm saying? It has to be such a circle of a thing. And I think in that circle is where we can find our political identity. You know what I'm saying? So I look forward to that.
I agree. How can we be more proactive instead of reactive?
I think we got to look at the data. I think data drives where you act at, and where you're weak at, you go the strongest at. And that's why I said, you know, the literacy aspect of our youth, because we're still struggling at that point. We got all these charter schools that popped up but didn't deliver on the literacy and the basic mathematic aspect of it. Like, our kids are still struggling there. Even just knowing basic civics. The Panthers, like, they was just dope. Like, yo, they covered the basic necessities to be a civilian in the United States. They knew their rights. That's how they were able to formulate and do most of what they've done. And shout out to the Deacons for Defense, because the Deacons for Defense was the first organization that was armed, fresh out of the South. Once again, Mississippi, Louisiana. And those were the brothers who never lost anyone, right? Shout out to Robert F. Williams, because he's the one who coined the phrase, by any means necessary. It wasn't Malcolm. Malcolm got it from Brother Robert F. Williams. So when we talk about technology and how should we use it and how we shouldn't use it, I think, you know, Brother Namir, you know, it's chess. So we should be strong where they're at, but we also should be dealing in analog, which they left alone. I think that was always our strength when we were segregated in this country, was because we always took the time to make sure that we use what they wouldn't use and we used it better than them. So that's why in the 80s and the 90s, we always had the retro cars because we knew how to use those cars better than them. We weren't trying to go to the dealership and get the newest car because we knew we had to be handy with those cars and we couldn't afford it. So we lived within our means. These smartphones are $500 to $1,000. How many of us have money to afford that? But at the same time, when Siri, not Siri, but is it Siri? Was that chick name that be coming in on the Apple phone? But anyway, I got one. I turned her off because I turned the mic off too, because if your microphone is on, it could read your thoughts. Even when you have a simple split in the mind, it can do it. So when I look at how we can be stronger and proactive, I think we need to deal with the things that we're seeing in front of us, but I also think that we need to be dealing with where we want to go collectively. And I believe it starts with the youth. The Panthers was a youthful organization. And not only were they youthful, but they were organized. And I know we talk about, you talked about intersectionality. What is that what they call it? I'm like these phrases, man. I try to stay out of these 501c3 phrases. So I do, because part of what broke up the Black Power movement in the 70s, not only was it the Blaxploitation films, but it was the 501c3 organizations. A lot of the leaderships from these Black Power movements, they were brought into the 501c3 movements. You can't be a nigga with an attitude if somebody's giving you a decent job and vacation. So you're no longer on the block protesting. So what we have to look and take from the Panthers is we also have to be able to move with capital. We need more Harry Belafontes of the world. We don't need athletes out trying to lead the movement. We need athletes funding the movement like Harry Belafonte did. So if Huey or one of them go to jail, then it's Harry Belafonte who writes the check to get you out. You see how the movement works? Like everybody plays their role. Once again, it's assembly line. Harry Belafonte wasn't out there like Muhammad Ali, but he could cut the check, right? And not only was it Harry Belafonte, it was a series, a lot of other entertainers, actresses, actors, basketball players, football players who just wrote the check. They weren't even on TV saying, we're fighting for this or we're standing for that. I mean, we did have some athletes who did, but the ones who wrote the check, right, they were able to keep writing those checks because they weren't visible. And I think that's what we need to go in the future realm. And what I would challenge any of us to do, especially when we talk about the Panthers, is look at the fact of how Huey ended up turning out. Huey ended up hooked on drugs. He got hooked on drugs. That's something that you really have to look at, because remember, they were dealing with the drug dealers back then. That was one of the last things that took brother out, was his addiction, because it was so stressful. Like activism is stressful. When you see people that's activists and they don't look like they're stressed, then they're not doing the work. It's like working out in the gym. If you're not sweating, you're not doing enough work in the gym if you're not sweating. So you can't be an activist and not have some type of trauma, not have some type of thing that you're going through. So if we're going to be proactive in this, we need to first decide where we want to go. We have to stop chasing the ambulances that white folks put out in front of us. We're talking about Kamala Harris today, but we still need reparations. When they talked about Kamala Harris, our conversation should be, where's the reparations? When they take Joe Biden, we need to say we need justice for Breonna Taylor. We have to drive the conversation. And that's what the Panthers did, drove the conversation.
No, definitely. And I hear kind of the answer to the question that I'm going to ask, but I just want to name it so that we can be real specific with it. So you guys been talking in analogy almost about how to take where we were lacking in the past and making it useful for us now. And I just want to get a little bit more specific and center our conversation around that. So how do we learn from the lessons of our past? That's the infiltrations, that's the tokenisms, that's the divide and conquer, and I'm gonna go with it. How do we learn from those lessons and formulate new strategies that get us not what we want, but what we need.
I think something really interesting about when we talk about like the lessons, and especially like thinking about Huey P. Newton, really succumbing to addiction, because activism work. I mean, to oppose the state, in the way that these brothers was doing, that, the way that we will have to do, it's a highly traumatic experience. Living here alone is a traumatic experience. I think that, a radical care and a radical pleasure does have to come in, when we talk about how we are, in community with each other. We have to really approach sustainability in a whole new way. We can't afford to be getting burned out. We can't afford to be, getting hooked on some shit because you about to get chewed up and ate out by the world. Like, the way that we care for each other is going to have to look probably like something maybe we've never seen, but maybe we have seen it. I think a lot about that first scene. That first scene in the movie, they're walking down and they're doing a visual together, and the Reverend is leading. You know what I'm saying? And while the youth are kind of having to confront, as they were escorting their elders, their mamas, you know what I'm saying? As they were escorting them, they're having to confront some of their older ideologies, things that maybe don't serve them any longer. And I think a lot of times, as youth, as hope, is killed from us, taken away, annihilated, we kind of get to this point where it's like we forget about what that radical care looks like, that radical love looks like, because that's what gets us through. That's what got our enslaved ancestors through.
And that's what made the Black Panther so dangerous.
That's what made the Panthers dangerous. But where could they have learned, you know what I'm saying, from Reverend, from Grandmama, that love that gets us through? You know what I'm saying? Because we can't succumb to the ills of the world. There's lessons there, you know what I'm saying? So we got to take some of these things. I think we got to take some of, what has gotten us through in the past to really continue to think about what does next look like. I'm trying to speak to it, but it's a big thing, you know what I'm saying? So specifically, but there's something there, like, even on my heart, we've been here before, we've been surviving hell. So we can't afford to, like I said, to succumb to the ills of the world. We have to remember, what that love looks like. You know what I'm saying? What that care looks like. We got to censor our pleasures where we can. If that looks like us growing our foods, if that looks like us, you know what I'm saying? We got to bring it in. We got to bring it in. But yeah, it's hard to speak about that specifically, but yeah, I'm going to leave it there.
I always say that individual healing is collective healing. So for one, we have to look within ourselves to assess what it is that's keeping us from loving on each other, right? I always hear the saying that it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to protect each other. And that's something that we've lost, Black unity is seen as a danger for white folks. So when they see specifically ADOS people coming together, it's already a dangerous signal for them. So they don't want to see it. But every other African diaspora can be seen together. They can have their community. They can have their stores. They can protect each other. But when it comes to us specifically, for 500 plus years, they've took us from our own family, and it still happens to this day. So we have to open our eyes and realize, like, none of this shit has ended, but we have to end it. And we have to look at ourselves and want that shit. But so many of us are stuck in our own egos, and it is going to take a while. So it's a complex, situation.
Gotta hold on to each other. You're muted. It's all right. Definitely. Brother Vacher, how do we take lessons from the past to shape and strategize our future?
I think it's been repeatedly said a few times throughout the discussion. We definitely need to educate ourselves and continue to educate the community so that we understand that what have we already been through, you know, how do we get around this? And like Essence and Amir said earlier, we have to come together as a village, regardless of what it is, whether it's for self-care, self-healing, whether it's for mental, physical, spiritual, whatever the case may be, we have to come together. But I also want to say that we also need to start to continue to address the disparities, the different disparities that we're going through here in Minnesota specifically. We have to continue to, you know, propose those policies that we see that we think are injustice. We have to continue to be those people to speak up for others, continue to be the voice for the voiceless. And I just want to leave it at that. For the most part, continue to lean in our leadership, and like my brother Thomas Berry said plenty of times, fall into the assembly line, and let's not worry about I'm sorry, I'm hearing my echo. Let's not worry about the spotlight. Let's not worry about the titles and things like that. But let's just all work collectively.
Before I let you to say your piece, I just maybe want to rephrase the question. So, what does it look like when we've learned the lessons? How do we know that we've learned the lessons?
I think a big Essence talks about it takes a village to care for each other, it takes a village to protect each other. She also talks about it's ego that gets in the way. And I think, so the 501c3, quote by Alice Walker, saying intersectionality teaches us. And we have other words. The truth is that we've learned, being, the children of chattel slavery, we've been brutalized and we've learned to brutalize each other, for whatever reason. And I think in the act of a radical unity, radical accountability for the ways that we have brutalized each other, we can harm each other, and meeting each other at those points, and really doing the healing there, so we can have a community that holds each other in a radical way like that. And it's, that's not something every community is able to do. That's a hard thing to do, but it's something that we have to do. And I think that looks like us learning our lessons. That looks like us learning our lessons. And perhaps that was how many Black women, were harmed in the network of the Black Panthers. We have to talk about those kinds of things. Like, that's where we meet each other. How many Black LGBTQ people, have been harmed by their communities? How can we begin to heal each other, meet each other where we've harmed each other for something else, or something new. Not just putting the Band-Aid on and saying we all Black, it's gonna be all right. That's the truth. That's the truth. But it ain't there. It's not there yet. You know what I'm saying? That's the truth. So,
yeah, I definitely rock with that answer. I also want to say, I feel like until we are fed up with the system, I feel like we just gonna keep repeating it until we get fed up. And my team, we talk about reparations a lot, and that's also a part of that healing process too. Because when we start to build our own communities, when we start to be like, you know what, I'm gonna take this land, I'm gonna put something here where it's gonna help my people. That's also gonna change our mentality. So it's also about reprogramming our minds and changing our mentality as well, to realize like, oh shit, you know what? They keep taking our shit. Guess what? We're gonna take that shit back. So I wanted to add that part in there too before my phone dies.
Yeah, I love both of those answers. I would say it would most definitely be exemplified through actions, right? Because once we learn the lesson, then we got to go into action, right? So what we would see, the numbers, like Brother Thomas brought up the numbers earlier, the numbers gonna start changing. Them statistics gonna start changing. You're gonna see a lot of more Black people, Black men, Black young women reading more, right? Having higher scores around the education field. You're gonna see the generational wealth begin to increase, and all of those numbers begin to change once we learn the lesson, I believe.
For me, I say, talking about 1804 and talk about the Haitian Revolution. When you watch 1804, the documentary, I always say it's a love story. Because what they did was they loved each other so much that they were throwing themselves inside of the cannons to make sure that the people behind them wasn't killed. That's the type of love that we need. That's the revolutionary love that you're talking about. And that revolutionary came from the fact that the house niggas as well as the field niggas came together inside of Haiti, and they devised the plan. But the first thing that they did, ironically, was they killed all the people off that they thought that was going to sell them out. They did that 30 days before, or no, 30, if I'm not mistaken, 6 months before they went after the white plantation owners. They went after the folks that they knew was going to sell them out, because they had to know that, hey, we can't have people treading on us. They couldn't have people infiltrating on them, telling on them, because when they first started their uprising, what started happening was people were going to tell. That's typically what happened on the plantations here in the United States. So let's make that clear. The second thing that we need to make, we need to make abundantly clear, because in this day and age, we talk about as if Black men are the predators in our community. Up until 2005, African American men were the number one victims of IPV. That's intimate personal violence. Mm-hmm. Black men were being more violated by Black women in relationships than any other group. Even more than Black women were being violated. Black men were the victims of violence. No one knows that. No one talks about that, because during that time, we were on the super predator kick. So we've all violated each other. So we have to get out of this divisive mentality that is one group against another, because that's BS. That's the first thing. The second thing is the most revolutionary thing you can do is start a family. Start a family so you can make a community. The community is stronger when it's a bunch of families. We want to talk about data? Go look at DeSoto, Texas. Go look at the marriage rates inside of DeSoto, Texas. Then go look at the poverty rate. You see high marriage, you see low poverty, and you see low crime. They haven't had a murder there in over 15 years. Why? Because they have a Black mayor, Black city council, Black business district, Black home ownership, Black marriages. That is the cornerstone, the cornerstone to what we need. We need more communities like that. So when we talk about Black Wall Street, and we talk, because the Panthers is just one political wing of it. We need politics, we need economics, and what Brother Namir was talking about, which he really didn't want to hit on, but we also need spirituality, whether it's African spirituality or what have you. We can craft our own, you know what I'm saying? Because really, anytime you have an uprising or a revolution, people make up their own mythology. They make up their own theology, if you will. So we need that ourselves. We need to keep our own type of characters in our minds, our own particular brain path that we're going. That is the way that we change things. That's how you change the data. But we have to stick together. We have to stop letting people come with these nuances that's telling us that we're different based off of our skin complexion, based off of our class, based off of our education. You know, the first bankers in this country were two barbers. Now, how the hell did a barber and a lawyer come together and they created a bank? And then we're saying, no, you got to have a degree to do X, Y, and Z. We've always went against the grain in this country. And that's who we are. That's how we change the game. We don't let them dictate to us what we do. We dictate to them what we are, who we are, and what we're going to be. And last but not least, if we're not taking up for the children, I'm going to go back to the Panthers one more time, because those breakfast programs were targeted to the children in the community. We just had a young girl shot in the stomach, and everyone's talking about that, right? If we're not taking care of our babies, because we talk a lot about the differences between the adults. If we're not talking about our children, we're going to fail our future. So if we're not standing up for them, and we're not standing in the gaps, making sure that the youth have a better tomorrow than what we have today, then we failed already. So that's what I think about when I think about the Panthers and what we can do collectively to change our projections.
It's all about the babies. It's all about the babies.
When we talk about building into the future, that is that generation that's going to acquire that wealth that we build today, with its interest in things. When we talk about radical love, that is providing that environment that we know that our children and their children will be able to thrive and not only survive but live in. We often are told that we need to survive, and I get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm tired of surviving. When do I get to live? And that's where we find ourselves. I often say in my political theology that we're at a point of reparations or revolution. And what that means in breaking it down is we can help the system of oppression help themselves by helping us through repairment for the intentional harms done, or I could take my black self and I could step back and watch you guys play identity politics, and eventually y'all gonna go after each other. And I'm gonna sit back, and after both y'all are dead, I'm gonna go into your houses and set up my shop. Saying that to say that this is the connection that I draw through the Black Army Brigade, because we are at that point. There is no more time to kick the can down the road and keep kicking it down. It's not in my interest. It's not in my kids' interest. It's not in my kids' interest to continue to kick that down in the name of collective well-being. Because if the old saying is true, when Black people are doing good, we all are doing good, then those who are saying that we need to just wait on it and things would change that tone in their narrative and start supporting those these collective agents in their movement towards the liberation and the authentic liberation, and not just minuscule incremental policy language switches. Because as we know, and as it was brought up earlier, as much as things in history change, it really stays the same, especially here in America. And if we keep having the same results, and we keep having these monumental legislation sessions and things, then there comes to a point where something's missing. So in closing out, I want to draw the connection between the creation and the formation of the Panther to the work that you do, and let me just make sure I read it right, and how you can draw the personal relevancy and similarities in the work that you do, and how the film overall has just impacted you that we're about to show.
I guess I go here as a community engagement person, the person that works in housing in general. There's been a lot of times where we had to pretty much identify the gaps, the needs of residents, and come up with a solution. So, advocating for a summer feeding program out there in the suburbs and Mound, I had to advocate for the school to deliver breakfast during the summertime and lunch to the housing organization, the community room, so that these families still got that meal that they were used to getting during the school year. So it's just small things like that where you're working in the community, you're in the forefront of people's experiences and struggles, and it's my job to help them find those resources. So I found that very relevant, from the feeding programs to the after-school programs, even with the resident safety councils that we create at the buildings. All that is definitely relevant to what the Black Panthers did and what their mission was.
Man, I would say politics. Our ancestors have been, pushed back from learning politics for a very long time. And now that we have the chance to vote and to push our agenda, some of us don't know how to do that. So, me and my team, we work on policy and creating policies that really will give resources to our people, will fight for our people through policy work. And I feel like that's what's also very relevant to the Black Panther Party, is the fact that, they knew their rights, they fought for their rights, and they made a statement by telling their people like, yo, y'all have these rights too, so get on it. So I would say that was also something that I loved, and that's pretty much relevant to what my team does.
As far as with Black Civic Network and the Panthers, I believe that definitely, the framework of politics and how we even organize during the family dinners, we got that from the Panthers. The Panthers did the breakfasts and we did the dinners. And it's all about making sure that we not only educate the families, the parents, but we also have a room where we educate the young folk. We're working on coming up with a curriculum so that we can teach the young people as well, so they can be politicized and they can be activated. The one thing that I would say with this movie, because this came out when I was a teenager, it's very important because in that part of the 90s, We had X, and then we had the Panther movie. And I think that we were wearing cross colors, dashikis, Black Power fists. Like, yo, we were on it. And I would tell you, if it wasn't for comedy, comedy literally joked us about this thing of keeping it real. Like we really were really loving each other. You know, when they talk about what happened here a month ago, a month and a half ago, Minnesota had riots in the 90s. We had race riots. My high school, my freshman year, we had a race riot. Like where the students at North High beat up the police and beat up the teachers and the principals because they were abusing a young brother inside of the principal office. So we were really galvanized based off of this movie. And I believe that this movie made us also politicize, right? I think that the Panthers, when you really think about it, we were all up under Ronald Reagan in the 80s, right? So in my teenage years, you know, before that we had Reagan. And Reagan was the governor during that time that was putting them through so much. But he also was the man that was behind putting crack cocaine inside of our communities. So the Panther movie drew a line to a lot of things for us to be politically activated, right? To also learn how to know our rights, as Essence stated, but also to protect ourselves as men. And I believe that if you look at a lot of the things, a lot of the people who are in my generation, who are Generation X's, that movie helped us tie back to that movement. That made us want to go pick up Soul on Ice. That made us want to know more about Fred Hampton. That made us want to know more about Eldridge Cleaver. That made us want to know more about Sister Angela Davis. That made us want to know more about Asada Shakur, right? Before Tupac was popping, because of that movie, we wanted to know about Asada Shakur, right? So I think that I just want to thank Mario Peoples for that, for putting that piece out, even throughout the criticism. That piece was needed. And I will tell you, we don't have political pieces like that anymore coming out, but we need more of that.
Yeah, I think the role of propaganda. They have propaganda. We gotta have propaganda. You know, they got spies. We gotta have spies. And I think as a Black artist, you know what I'm saying? I think I'm charged with that a lot of times, thinking about, you know, what kind of propaganda exactly is it that I want to create? You know, seeing Panther, the film, you know, I had it on bootleg in the crib, you know, as a shorty, you know, and I watched it, and I think I felt so angry after seeing the film. And I think it's very important for us to see our anger reflected back at us, you know what I'm saying, so we can really identify what it is that we feel. That these aren't new feelings, you know what I'm saying, that these aren't new traumas, and that they're not new understandings. I think there's a lot of power in that, you know, in us being able to connect our anger, but that there's also something beyond anger. You know, so that's what I'm charged with in my practice. And, you know, closing, I would just say, you know, the earth gon' quake, the water gon' wave, and one thing about it said the fire gon' flame, the wind gon' blow, the sun gon' shine, and at the end of the world, I'm yours, you mine. Baby, when I look in your eye, I know that we gotta do more than survive. I want the cornbread with the honey beside. I don't wanna run no more, I think I'm a fly. I really think about what it means for us to even be here any longer, you know what I'm saying? Is the United States. I mean, I don't really know. Is Exodus the way? But these are our questions, you know. How much longer do we even want to run? You know, it feels like a running. You know what I'm saying? We think we have these answers, but you know, who really knows? So bless it.
Or how Marvin Gaye would say, "Who really cares?"
Yo, brother Kais, can you please reintroduce the question for me? I just transitioned and everything, ran through the rain and all that. But I'm here, and I gotta say, I love what you just shared, brother Fierce. I really love what you just shared. Thank you.
So the question is, in closing, can you tell us how the film that we're about to show has impacted you personally, and where you can draw personal relevance and similarities in the work that you do?
I say most definitely how it impacted me personally is just to be more conscious of my role as being identified as a person that's in a position of leadership, or like Brother Fierce said, my task as well as being an artist, and being a speaker. But I really took from Huey Newton in this and how he was with his leadership, and like what Brother Thomas said earlier, actually, about the fact that he ended up on drugs, right? So knowing the importance of us to continue to take care of ourselves, to be connected to our spirituality and have a true foundation that's built upon God and a higher purpose is very important. So this film most definitely how I would navigate in this. And ultimately, I would just like to share with everybody, the importance of us understanding that we all have a role in this revolution. And I know I've said this plenty of times, but I just want to make sure that we're conscious of not like watering down or silencing others who have ideas or other different strategies, right? I think what's beautiful about us as a people is that we're so resilient and we're so creative, and we're impromptu. We make something happen out of nothing. And yeah, I just want to say this film most definitely is transformational. And we just put this film in our curriculum, and I just showed it to a group of young Black men 2 weeks ago, and it completely, enlightened those. So just to be able to see that little spark, it shows me like we got to continue to replicate this. Like Brother Thomas said, we need way more films like this. And my responsibility as a storyteller is to be able to bring those images to life.
That's powerful. That's powerful, and I'm glad that those brothers was able to, those brothers and sisters. I'm not sure what the group was that you were in. I'm happy to hear that they had been moved by seeing this film and were able to see themselves in it. If I'm to understand what you just said correctly.
Yeah, most definitely. That's exactly what it was about. My bad to cut you off. But that's most definitely what, and it was all like impromptu too. Like I came in, and it's a group at the Link. So the Link is a nonprofit organization. They got like a diversion program, and all these young brothers, they on probation right now, and they dealing with the same ERC program. And I came in, and the topic was conflict resolution, right? But when I came in and I heard that topic, we spoke about the internal conflict, right? Within ourselves, and being able to address that, then deal with conflict resolution outside of you. And I showed that Black Panther flick because they are somebody who addressed a huge conflict. They organized, they got educated, and they empowered themselves and ultimately empowered others. So yeah, most definitely, that's what it was about. So thank you for showing me this film, because you just showed me this film about a month ago. This is my first time seeing it, and I was like mind blown. I was honestly upset at the fact that nobody ever introduced this film to me. Like I was upset, but it's a blessing. Everything happens for a reason, and the marathon continues.
Well, that's a great testimony to hear about. Sorry, hold on. That's super powerful. To hear you say that, to hear your testimony, and it's moving. And I just want to be able to create spaces like this so that we can continue to have these impactful moments as peers, as community, as intergenerational communities, because we're all still growing, and we're all still learning, and we're all still being exposed to different types of stories that feed and build us up. And although this film is sort of dramatized, it still has its cultural relevancy, and and it's facts, and it's well, it's truth, I should say, in its creation. But it is getting close to that time, and I do know that we started a little bit late, but I do want to make sure that we are respectful of our panelists' time, and that we do get our showing on its way. So at this time, I want to extend a note of gratitude to all 5 panelists, Louis, Namir, Vachel, and Essence, for coming and being a part of it. I want to give a shout out to our behind-the-scenes cameraman, Rico, with, how do you pronounce it again? Nautilus. He taught me a new word, Nautilus. For all that they did, I want to shout out the Urban League Twin Cities, the young professionals, for all the background work that they're doing. And for those who are interested in watching the movie that's going to be live streamed, it's going to be on this same Zoom. It's just going to start up in a couple minutes. So if you're interested in watching the movie, just stay close by this link, or stay where you can access it, and we'll be getting started in a few short minutes. So thanks, everybody. Any last closing out statement?
I just want to say thank you to Thomas for being the elder in here, dropping knowledge as well.
Definitely. Can't forget OG Thomas Berry coming through, dropping them rubies.
Yeah, bless, all the panelists. It's been a real pleasure. And I really want to, commend Thais and BAB on this effort. Is we were well treated, and this has been lovely. So, bless you, bro.
Yes, thank you.
So with that, I think we're gonna close out this part of the event, and thank you for all that has came in on Facebook, all the attendees that popped in and out. Gratitude, peace be with you.